Welcome back again to Matthew King's Private Pilot Ground School. Today we're going over emergencies. So we just went over the emergency descent, which happens in the case of maybe a fire, or you see smoke in the cabin, or maybe there's a medical emergency on board. So now we're going to be going through our emergency landing. So this is in the case that pretty much our engine quits. And so let's say we're flying along, we're up at 5,000 feet, all of a sudden the RPM gauge just starts winding back. Oil pressure's going down, oil temperature's going down, and we just see that our engine is beginning to fail. So we are gonna go likewise through our ABC checklist. Now it's a little different. So airspeed 4 on the emergency descent, we were going for really rapid airspeed, trying to get down to the ground as soon as possible. So for our emergency landing, engine out procedure, we're gonna be pitching for best glide, or best glide speed, which in our Cessna 172 is gonna be 65 knots. All right, so why do we have a best glide speed? You would think, don't you wanna just kind of hold it up at as low a speed possible so it keeps you off the ground longer, gives you more time to make a decision? So not exactly. So think back to when we're first learning takeoffs for the first time. So when we're learning takeoffs, we have our VX speed and we have our VY speed. So our VY is going to give us the greatest amount of distance over the shortest period of time. And so our best glide speed pretty much does the same thing but coming in. So that is going to allow us to glide the very furthest possible distance, which is what we want when we don't have power. And so we're pitching for 65 on our airspeed, and then we are looking for our best landing spot. So ideally we want an airport. If an airport is not within suitable and reasonable range, we're going to be looking for maybe a nice grass field or a nice dirt field. And then if nothing like that is available, we're kind of looking for roads. But remember, we kind of want to avoid those roads. We've got power lines and cars, and we just don't want to get involved in that. And so once we find our best landing spot, we're going to run through our checklist. And at the same time, or we're going to run through our checklist first. So potentially try and restart the engine. So this is going to kind of vary depending on what altitude you're at. So if we are at an altitude, a high cruising altitude, let's say we're up at 8,000 feet, we're way up in the atmosphere, and we know that we have a decent amount of time to glide down. We may try to restart our engine because we have a decent amount of time to get down before we do our communications. Now, let's say we're only at about 2,000 feet, and we're just kind of going down pretty quick. We may not have time to try and restart the engine. And so if you do, that's great. If you don't, then go ahead and prepare for that emergency landing. So communication. It's going to kind of consist of the same thing. We want to go to 121.5. That's the on guard frequency. And that's where we let air traffic control know about our emergency. So it starts with Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. Skyhawk 739 Romeo Lima, we have an engine failure, and tell them where you are and what you plan on doing. So I'm 10 miles north of the Milledgeville Airport, and I'm planning on landing in this nearby field. After that, you want to go ahead and squawk 7700, so put that into your transponder to transmit that signal that you are an aircraft in distress. And then, you've done your ABCs, you've run through that checklist. Engine's not wanting to restart, then we're going to go ahead and prepare for a power off landing. So if we have that landing spot in sight, we're still pitching for that best glide speed. Let's say there's a nice little field right over here. And so if you've got the time and the altitude, we're going to try and find where the wind is coming from. Make this as good of a landing as possible. So if we figure out, if we're right up here, we figure out the wind is coming from behind us. If we have the speed and the distance to kind of wrap around, then we're gonna try and do that so that we have the headwind, when landing. And now a few things with when you know that you're gonna do an emergency landing. So we are not gonna introduce any flaps until we guarantee that that landing is 100% assured. So let's say we're still a few miles away and we're wanting to, get our flaps in there because we normally use flaps when we land. So we are only introducing flaps when we know that the landing is assured. We don't want to get too slow, and we don't want to not be able to make it as far of distance. And we're gonna kind of treat this like a soft field landing. So once those wheels touch down, you're gonna try and keep that nose off as long as possible. And just before landing, go ahead and turn everything off. Your checklist will instruct you to do this, but it'll instruct you to, pull the mixture out, throttle, idle, turn the mags off, turn the lights off. Eventually, right before landing, turn your radio and your radio master off, and go ahead and prop that door open just like that emergency descent. You're going to want to prop that door open just before, in case it'll help you in the case that you have to ditch the aircraft. And so, that is an emergency landing. We want to prepare for it the best we can. So if and when that does happen to us, that training kicks in almost instantly and we know what to do and we can be as safe as possible. Hope this helped you guys out.